online postgraduate webinar for our LLM in Drafting Legislation, Regulation and Policy at the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies. My name is Rebecca and I am a Senior Marketing Officer here at the University of London School of Advanced Study. I'm joined today by the Programme Director, Professor Constantin Stefanou. Firstly, it's just a reminder that the application deadline is the 31st of July 2025 for the September intake. I hope this webinar today answers all your questions about studying for a PhD with us, and you'll be on your way to submitting your application. For the first part of the webinar, Constantin will be talking through his presentation about studying the programme and how you can benefit from it. Following the presentation, there'll be a live Q&A where we want to answer as many questions as you have about studying with us. So please post your questions in the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen. We'll be answering your questions live on camera, and we also have our specialist team who will be answering on the chat box. So please do keep an eye on it to see if your question has been answered there. Right, I think we're ready to begin. Constantin, it'd be great if you could give us a brief...
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, and thank you all for having an interest in our LLM in drafting legislation, regulation, and policy, which is quite unique, actually, because it's the only such LLM in the world. We offer it at the Sir William Dale Center for Legislative Studies, which is, of course, one of the three research centers of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, which is part of the School of Advanced Study, which is one of the colleges of the University of London. I'm sure people know some of the, if you like, better known colleges of the University of London, like the London School of Economics, UCL, but we are the smallest, the School of Advanced Study, and we only do postgraduate programs. So this LLM started life in 2004 as the MA, because back then the University of London had the joint LLM, so we were not allowed to say LLM. It was the MA in Advanced Legislative Studies. Why? Well, because we are the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, and they thought, well, no, this is the first master's program of the Institute. It should have this name. It is the first really ever LLM in legislative drafting, and it was started by Professor Helen Santhaki and myself, who had joined the Sir William Dale Center while Sir William Dale himself was alive. The LLM essentially examines issues related to the policy process, the legislative process, and of course, the drafting process. Let me give you an overview. So, the structure. Well, you can do the full-time version, the full-time mode of delivery, as we say, which is 12 months, the taught program in London, and you will have classes 3 days a week. Or you can opt for the distance learning 24 months program, and for the distance learning mode of delivery, there are two intakes, one in September and one in January. And the reason for this is very simple. We know that many universities finish late in June, July, and students don't have the time to collect all the documents and have them ready by September. So we have a second intake in January. As I said, this is a unique program, and it has 6 modules. 6 modules and a dissertation, of course. Legislative drafting 1 and 2, comparative legislative studies 1 and 2, research methods training, and a relatively new model that we have introduced in the last 4 years, the theory and practice of regulation. So when we look at the modules individually, legislative drafting 1 and 2, they're taught by Professor Helen Santhaki and Dr. Maria Musmuti. And of course, it's the nitty-gritty of this course. Essentially, the aim is to analyze and explore the distinct problems faced by professional drafters in the common law and the civil law, and to propose and promote best practice in statutory drafting. And each one, legislative drafting 1 and 2, there are 2 modules. Each module has 10 topics, and I have some sample topics here: introduction, drafting instructions, clarity and ambiguity, plain language, the legislative sentence, preliminary provisions, final provision. There are all sorts of things. And of course, in recent years, we also focus on quality of legislation. I will explain a bit more later about this. So, first 2 modules, legislative drafting 1 and 2. And the reason we just have the boring LD1, LD2 title is this: that when we started this program, we had back then they were called courses, and each course was 24 weeks. So we had 1 course in legislative drafting, 1 in comparative, etc. And when we modularized, we asked to produce 2 modules of 10 weeks each. And so we brought it down from 24 weeks to 20 weeks. And because people were familiar with the topics and the name of the module, we kept it to legislative drafting 1, legislative drafting 2, comparative legislative studies 1, comparative legislative studies 2, which is a course I teach. And the aim is to introduce students to the theoretical constitutional framework in which legislative drafting takes place at the national and international levels, taking into account political doctrines and approaches. Again, 2 modules, some sample topics are the policy process, drafting and the policy process, drafting and the legislative process, drafting and public administration, prioritizing legislation, drafting elections, electoral systems and voters, dealing with regulation, drafting as a form of political communication. Again, the idea is that while LD1, LD2, the legislative drafting 1 and legislative drafting 2 modules look at the nitty-gritty, I look at the periphery where drafting takes place. Why? Because increasingly we have not only drafters who want to take this course, but policy officers and digital officers. So it's very important for us to have, for us to cover additional areas, and comparative legislative studies do this exactly. Then we have research methods training, a compulsory module. Compulsory module, I will explain why, because you know how we always say, well, can you do research? And invariably everybody says, yes, of course I can do research. And then comes the question, well, where did you learn to do research? Good question. And at this level, you need to have a separate module. And we do have a separate module. In fact, our module is stronger than others because it is taught by myself and ILS law librarians. So for some aspects, things like accessing the research sources and databases and what have you, formatting your essays, your theses, looking at footnotes and bibliography, all of these things are done by the law librarians. And then I come in with things like developing a hypothesis and a methodology, matching theory methodology, looking at things like the comparative method, etc., etc. So research methods training, an important one, and you need to take this in the first term. And finally, our most recent addition, Theory and Practice of Regulation by Dr. Maria Musmuti, who recently wrote a book on the practice of regulation. Those of you who are drafting, those of you who are policy officers or digital officers will know that most of the time you are amending existing legislation. In fact, you're amending existing legislation or drafting new regulations. We live in regulatory states. Most of the time, we look at regulations, we amend regulations, we write new regulations. So it is important to look at regulations. In the last 20 years, what we have in both the common law and the civil law, we have which was a French idea, the establishment of so-called framework legislation or umbrella legislation, and on this legislation you pin all sorts of regulations, and that's how it is. So we felt we needed a separate module for this, and we look at things like theory of regulation, behavioral approaches to regulation, quality and regulation, effectiveness of regulation, regulatory design, regulatory impact assessment, etc. So, how will teaching takes place? Well, if you are doing the 12 months program, the on-campus LLM, you will participate in lectures, seminars, and face-to-face discussions with tutors and other students. Our LLM is the old format, one that very few universities still use. As far as I know, only Oxford, Cambridge, and us use this. So you will not have lectures and tutorials. You will have lectures and one-to-ones. So there will be a lecture, and then you arrange to see self or Helen or Maria, and you discuss it face to face. I mean, you can come to the office, or we can do it online. It's not as if the whole thing is difficult, but this is what we do, and this is how we teach this LLM. If you study via distance learning, if you're doing the 24 months program, you will receive access to extensive materials delivered online and by mail, and participate in online discussions with tutors and other students. Of course, it is a distance learning course, so you will be expected to undertake private reading and independent research, and you will benefit from individual tuition and support. All students are assigned a personal, of course, dissertation supervisor. So, one last thing, students undertaking the course by distance learning are required to attend a week-long intensive residential induction in London. Don't worry, you can now do this online. If you want, you can come to London and you can do it in person, or you can do it online. It gives you a chance to meet the tutors and other students and to start, your studies with a maximum level of support. But don't worry about this. It's no longer a requirement to come to London. Now, everybody, all the students, those who are doing the 12 months and the 24 months program, will use the virtual learning environment. All the essential and necessary resources for the LLM, they're all stored in the VLE, and all LLM students have access to it. We have a huge VLE. Our VLE contains more than 2,000 items on legislative drafting. It contains the tutor's PowerPoint presentation, of course, a minimum of 4 relevant pieces of, I mean, more than 4. The minimum, I think, is I don't know, 7, 8, and of course some video recording of lectures. Let me explain why we've done this. We had the VLE years before the school itself started using the Moodle, the VLE. Why? Because in my days, if you were doing a master's, the director of the program would come in, give you the student handbook, and in the student handbook, the last 20 pages or perhaps 25 pages would be a long bibliography, and it would have books and articles for each topic, and it looked impressive. But of course, when you looked at it, you had a topic, and in the topic there was like 9 books and 25 articles, and you look at it and you think, well, who reads 9 books and 25 articles in 1 week? No one. So really, they were there for good measure. They were not really there for the students to. Who in his right mind assigns 9 books in 1 week? No one. So we did something else. We said, which are the important bits, the important chapters, the important books, the important articles that we feel students should read for each topic? And we've included them. So you just click and you read them. If you want to read more, of course you can do it. If you want to examine other topics, of course you can do that. But we will give you the presentation, and usually between 10 and 20 items. And we feel that between 10 and 20 items, or not all of them are chapters, not all of them are books, some of them are websites. You can do it. You can do it in a week. You can look at them. So for the DL students, it's quite important also, because they need to understand that they have exactly the same, if you like, support as those doing the LLM in person. We have some video recording of lectures, and initially we had the full lecture, 2 hours, and then of course we were informed by Central University that in their experience and according to their statistics, no one really watches 2 hours of any video, let alone a lecture on drafting. And it was suggested that we bring it down to around 20 minutes, which is what we've done. So we have shortened versions of the lectures so that students can watch them. Our library. Now, we take great pride in our library. You probably have used libraries, of course, but you haven't used a library as complete as ours. It is the largest legal library in Europe and one of the largest legal libraries in the world. To give you an idea, most university libraries would be proud to have one specialized law librarian. We have 21. There is very little they cannot find for you. There is very little that they will not send you. They will find it for you if you cannot trace it and send it to you in PDF format. You can access the library remotely from anywhere with an internet connection. Our digital collection is not as complete because for many years we were, as all libraries did, we were gathering books, and some of the books are not in digital format. But for those who will do it or are planning on doing the course in London, you will see we have huge library. We have sections where we have legislation from countries that do not exist anymore. We have, for example, in our vaults, we have the complete legislation of Tanganyika, and we have the complete legislation of Palestine when it was a British protectorate. So Our library is something we're very, very proud of. Assessment. There are no exams, you'll be happy to hear. 3,500 words essay per module. So six in total. Each is worth roughly 10% of your grade. And 10 to 15,000 words dissertation, which is worth roughly 1/3 of your grade. The pass mark is 50. The merit mark is, it says 65 to 69. We've recently changed it. It is now 61 to 69. And of course, the distinction is a mark of 70% overall. So if you get a 70 for an essay, you get a distinction for the essay. If you get a 70% overall, you have a distinction for the LLM. Something we've started 6 years ago. It started with COVID. Online sessions for DL students initially. Now it's online sessions for everybody. We do this, and we do it on a set date. On the last Friday of every month, we understand that if you're doing this distance learning, you will probably feel cut off from the student body because you don't come to the university week in, week out. You don't meet other students. You just feel cut off. And what you want is contact, and we understand this. Normally, the University of London will allow you. I mean, for the University of London's program, the international program, there's one contact, I think, per term. We thought that was not good enough, so we have one per month, and usually it's more than one per month. Usually we have the last Friday of every month where anyone can join in. We switch on our videos, look at each other, talk. You can talk to your tutors, talk to each other, ask questions. And usually there's another one. We have another one where we will give a short lecture on something, because people will say, "Oh, I'm about to submit my dissertation or submit my essays. Can we have a lecture on this?" And we will offer a lecture. Usually we do this for an hour, sometimes longer, sometimes less. Sometimes we only have very few students joining. At any moment in time, this LLM has around 20 students. I don't really want to have more, because as you can gather, it's difficult. You need a lot of time, and you spend a lot of time with a student with the one-to-one sessions. And if I had, I don't know, 100, 200, I just couldn't do it. There aren't enough hours in the day. So we have these online sessions, and sometimes you will get all I don't know, 20 students, or sometimes one cohort will come, the others will not come, or sometimes you will get two people, and that's fine too. Remember that this is in addition to the one-to-one sessions. We are pretty relaxed about this. We give people our mobile phones, our Skype IDs. So you can Skype, by the way, Skype ends in May apparently, so we will need to use something else. And if you what we do is not time critical. But if you doing it distance learning, you feel, oh my goodness, I did something wrong, I need to call someone. Well, you call us and we have a chat, and everything will be sorted. So it's not, we all of us are accessible. Student engagement week, as we said, a week-long study visit in London, now also offered online, and I mean hybrid. Some of the students in London are in the classroom and others are online. So what we do is, we have insights and workshops on the different modules. You have interaction with tutors and fellow students. Sometimes you have more one-to-one sessions, and of course, opportunity to participate in the academic life of the institute. So, do you have to attend? Yes, but you don't have to come to London. You can do it online, and students are encouraged to attend during their first year. So, what else should you know about it? Well, the ILS is one of the most respected law research units in the world. We have very strong research ethos, and we have a library to match our claims. The LLM is unique because it is based on one of the world's hubs for legislative drafting, the Sir William Dale Center. We are the only center, and I'm the director of the Sir William Dale Center. We are the only academic center in the world that specializes in legislative drafting and law reform. By the way, if you're going to ask me, what do the graduates do? We do not have graduates who are not in employment. Okay, admittedly, most of our students are drafters, people who work as drafters already, but we do not have any students who are not employed, although we do have students, graduates who are now retired from their offices. This is a very well-known course for two reasons. Number one, of course, because it is the only such LLM in the world, and number two, because we focus on quality. And when I say quality, because you use this word quality, this quality, that, what does it mean? Okay, let me explain to you what it means, and I will give you an example. Because as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Every year, about 11,000 people in Europe will graduate with an LLM. 11,000 people. Of those, 50 to 60 will publish. From the 11,000, 50 to 60 will publish their dissertations. Of those 50 to 60, between 6 and 9 will be our students. So one program, just one law program, has 10% of all publications of dissertations. That's why we say we have quality. That is what quality is about. Entry requirements, you probably know them, but we've included them here. And there is a PDF version of this presentation, so you will be able to peruse and click on the various things. And of course, remember, University of London experience, as we say. You will benefit not only by coming to the ILS with its fantastic library, not only to the School of Advanced Study, but generally to the University of London. And just a nice picture of London. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you for giving me 30 minutes of your life to listen to what I have to say. Thank you again.
Thank you, Constantin. That was really interesting, and I hope it has answered some of your questions. We're now going to move on to the live Q&A portion of this webinar. I can see that we already have some questions in the chat box, but please keep asking any questions you might have, and we will get through them. So let me get to the first question. So how should I prepare to study at master's level? How does teaching style differ from an undergraduate degree?
Interesting question. It's different, and you will see the difference not only in the style of teaching, but also in what we will advise about essays. So, as an undergrad, you want to show that you know your stuff.
Yeah.
As an undergrad, when you write an essay, you will write the essay and show that you know your stuff. At master's level, we take it for granted that you know your stuff. We want critical analysis. What we want from you, and for the essays you're going to write for us, is to prove something, not something original. You write for a purpose. You don't write to show me that you know your stuff. Yes, I take it for granted you know your stuff. Now use it to prove something to me. So you need to write for a purpose. I hope I've answered the question.
No, that's great advice. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. Can I take the LLM if I'm from a civil law country rather
Yes.
than a common law country?
Yes, yes. Every year we have lots of people from civil law jurisdictions. In fact, this LLM, about 10 years ago, we were asked if we would be prepared to take it to Frankfurt because the European Union wanted it. And we said no. I'll tell you why we said no. Because then we thought, okay, so 5 days a week we'll be teaching in London, and for our weekend we'll be going to Frankfurt to teach.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for a short life. It's not a recipe
Yes. Yeah.
for a good MA. Or
Yeah.
back then it was an LLM, of course, already. So yes, indeed. And as you know, I don't need to tell you, in Europe, in civil law jurisdictions, legislative drafting is a newcomer.
Yeah.
What you hear in civil law jurisdictions is, oh, how terrible it is that legislation is so badly written, and nothing else. There was a course many years ago. Back then it was called Via Correspondence. There was a course in Geneva. But we started our MA then in 2004. By 2006, the course in Geneva, which was in French, stopped completely. It just died. So we had a lot of people, especially from the European Union, coming to us. Lots of them were what is now referred to as legal translators.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's so interesting to know. Thank you. So the next question we have is, how much of this degree focus on the practical experience of drafting legislation rather than, say, the more theoretical?
Okay. There, of course, there are exercises. Of course, we have set dates when we do exercises. And not only that, but something I forgot to say earlier, we're often asked by other organizations if we can provide them with students to help them. And we do this quite a lot with UN Habitat. In fact, we have 2 students who helped UN Habitat with their comparative research and ended up with publications before they even finished the LLMs, UN Habitat publications. Yes, there are practical exercises. If you're only interested on the practical side, you can do the professional course in drafting, which is 3 weeks, and we offer it every year. But the LLM is the complete thing. It's if you like, how you train trainers.
Yeah.
So you will do the exercises, you will do the theoretical part, you will do everything.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. That's perfect. The next question we have here is, as a practicing barrister, would this LLM be useful for my career progression?
If you want to work for government and be a drafter or a policy officer or a digital officer, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, only if you want a degree from the University of London, or if you have a personal interest in these things. Remember, it's not legal drafting. We're not looking at how you draft legal documents, contracts, and what have you. It's legislative drafting. So, unless in the future you want to become a drafter, be involved in this at government level, inevitably, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that will help the asker of that question. So the next question we have here, what are the opportunities to do work experience or placements on this LLM, and does it offer much networking opportunity?
You will have networking opportunities simply by joining the LLM. You will be in the same room with 20 drafters from other parts of the world. Some of them are early career, some are mid career, some of them are attorney generals.
Wow.
So you plus we have, of course, a network, an existing network. Um, as for career opportunities, well, okay, practically every year we have the drafting clinic where organizations or even countries can come and ask for help. And sometimes, if you're UN Habitat, you don't mind um, asking for help. If you're a small country, usually you say, I don't want my name to be mentioned. But yes, they come to us and we ask our students. I think um, Helen is doing something. They will end up publishing a chapter in a book with our London cohort this year. They examined something, a piece of legislation, and they will publish it in an edited book. So you do this. You depends on the request or the requests we have from other countries or other organizations. Usually there are requests. Sometimes there aren't, but you will certainly have a network. If you're a drafter, you understand what I'm saying. If you're not a drafter, if you just finished university and you think, okay, I will do this, and within 6 months I will get a job. My answer is, I don't know if it will be within 6 months, 8 months, or whatever. But
Yeah.
what I know is that our graduates are never without work. But then again, most of them were already at work before they started, so it's very, very difficult.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for answering that. That's great. We just got another question in asking, does the application of this degree apply mainly to British legislation, or can it be applied elsewhere?
Anywhere.
Yeah.
The idea that you need to, unless you speak the language and fluently, you cannot study legislative drafting is nonsense.
Yeah.
It is the idea that drafters are quote unquote wordsmiths
Yeah.
is so 19th century. No, they're not. They're lawyers. They have good knowledge of the law. Um, they have good training. That's why they produce good legislation, not because they're clever, not because they work on their wits, as yesteryears lawyers used to say, oh, this is what you need to do, work on your nonsense.
Yeah.
You need to apply yourself. And the best way, of course, is by doing some sort of a postgraduate course, no doubt about it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that, because that's a question that we get quite a lot. So the next question we have here is, what standard of English do I need to study the LLM, and do I need any English qualifications?
There is an exam which is common for all universities in the UK, the IELTS.
Yes.
And you need to pass that. And
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think your grade should be 6.5, 7. I can't remember what the grade is, but if you go to the website, it will tell you. This is not something that we require. It's a requirement for your visa.
Yeah.
If you don't get the right grades, we cannot offer you the visa letter.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. So the next question we have is, what are the expectations in terms of time commitments for studying LLM? Can you have full-time or part-time job at the same time?
Practically every single one of our DL students, distance learning, works. That's why they're doing distance learning. And I would be a liar if I told you that it will not interfere with your personal life and your family life. Just nonsense. Of course it will. You're undertaking a 2 years degree. You need to study, you need to write essays, you need to do this, that, the other. Of course it will interfere. Now, what I can tell you is that it doesn't interfere enough for people to stop the course.
Yeah.
Sometimes they interrupt for 6 months or something because there's too much work in the office, because there are personal problems, whatever. But they come back and they finish it. So it will probably interfere a bit, but most people are working. They're reading afternoons and weekends, really, and still they complete it. So
okay, yeah. No, I think that's a really good point to bring up that I think a lot of students are concerned with. So thank you for that. So you spoke a little bit about distance learning in your presentation, and there's a question here asking, is the distance learning option as effective as studying on campus? I don't know if you just want to add anything more to what you said in your presentation.
It is. We, at the moment, and for the last 4 years, we have more distance learning students than we have on-campus students, for a reason.
Yeah.
London is very expensive. You come to London, you don't just pay the fees. You need a couple of thousand a month at least.
Yeah.
So it adds up to the amount of money you're going to spend. And I will tell you this, that about half the people who are coming to the London, but the 12 months program, are Chevening scholars. Because Chevening is a full scholarship,
okay,
they get the fees paid. Otherwise, people opt for the distance learning because it's a much cheaper and just as effective mode of delivery.
Yeah, great. Thank you for clarifying that. That's great. How big are the classes? What backgrounds do most students come from?
Classes, I only accept up to 20 people. I don't want to have more. So classes are very small because we accept very few. Background. People are usually legislative drafters, policy officers, or digital officers. Occasionally, we get people from international organizations. We had someone from the International Nuclear Authority, something like that, who took it. We had people from UN Habitat who have taken it, but mostly it's people with degrees in law. You don't have to have a degree in law, but it helps. If you're going to be a policy analyst, of course, it's understood you're going to have a degree in public administration or political science or something along that. That's also acceptable.
Cool. Great. Thank you so much for that answer. So this is a question we get quite a lot. Is there an age limit to studying for the LLM, and can somebody be too old?
The oldest student we have, I think this year we have someone who's late 60s.
Okay.
So the answer is no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a common concern, but I think it's good to clear up these kind of misconceptions. What level of support does a supervisor or tutor give at LLM level?
So because we don't have a lot of students, we can offer a lot more support.
Yeah.
And this will help the quality of your work. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, I will not give you a topic. You will decide on the topic. You will send me your title, your hypothesis, your methodology, and then we will sit down and we'll discuss it. And I will tell you, yes, it's a good one, or I'm experienced enough to tell you, I think you're doing too much, or this is not the right way to approach this. Yeah. So we will sit down, and from day one, we will decide on things together. Again, as I said, what we do is not time critical. You will have our email, you will have our Skype ID, you will have our phone numbers. You can always talk to us. And, at least once a month, we will be online anyway. Or at least once a month, other students on the last Friday of every month, we will be online. So it's not, support has never been a problem. If anything, people welcome the level of support they get.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that answer. So the next question we have here,
Yes.
what career opportunities are there for me once I've completed my LLM? And do you have examples of what other students have gone on to do?
The overwhelming majority of our students already are drafters. They're working for the Attorney General's office or the Ministry of Justice, depending on the country and where their drafting offices are. So I can tell you that some of our students are working for the OPC in London.
Okay.
I can tell you that our students work for OPCs all over the Commonwealth. There is from Malawi to Nigeria to Kenya to some of our students by now are very high ranking in the countries. Some of the people from our first and second batches have progressed now to be not just heads of legislative drafting, but doing other things, being commissioners, being law commissioners, being all sorts of things. So this LLM will give you this, partly, I suppose, because it's the only such LLM, and partly because actually employers do accept that we offer students quality. You should be able to find employment quickly, but as I said, it is unlike other LLMs where people will come straight from last year at university. A lot of them come as drafters, so they go back to drafting. On 2 or 3 occasions in the last years, we had students who finished and immediately went into PhD because they wanted academic side of it. But again, when they went into PhD, they didn't do draft, they did something else.
Okay.
It's very, very difficult for me to answer this question exactly because 90% of our students already have a job.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fine. I think you did a great answer. And also, it's worth saying we actually have an article with one of the graduates of the LLM, Devi St. Luce. So I can add so I can add the link into the chat box there if anybody's interested. But her story is amazing, so it's definitely worth reading.
Well, I mean, she wanted to do freelancing, and in the end, she went straight into a job.
Yeah, it's a great success story. So this is our penultimate question, and I think I kind of know the answer to it, but what is the best way to get in touch with staff to discuss LLM study?
Send me an email and we can do a Teams meeting, and I will send you an invitation and we'll have a chat. I mean, we're pretty easygoing. It's not as if we're easygoing exactly because of our small numbers, and this is a good thing about coming to the institute. If we were at another university, we'd probably be told this LLM will only run if you have 80 people.
Yeah.
Well, the institute doesn't mind, 20 over 20. They would like more, but I can step in and say I cannot do more than 20. They will say, "Oh, all right then," and that's how it is, and that's why we've been able to keep it going all these years. It's now over 20 years.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. And I think my colleague can post your email address into the chat box.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Of course.
Great. Thank you so much. So one last question, a good question to wrap up with, I think. Do you have any advice for prospective students on what would constitute a successful application?
If you're a professional drafter, you are really pretty much the same as 90% of our cohorts. If you're not, if you're straight out of university and you haven't even cleared your bar exams, if you're not a professional lawyer, I will probably insist on you having a very high grade. If you have passed your bar exams and If you've done a few things, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I said, if you're straight out of university, you need to have very good grades. And also, this is again not us. There is a table of equivalence
Yeah.
that is produced by the Ministry of Education in the UK, not us, not. And it tells you that if someone has a degree from that university, it's equivalent to this degree
Yeah.
in the UK. And sometimes you have a law degree from a country which is not really recognized as a law degree here.
Mm.
Now, that is fine if you're a professional drafter, because I can step in and say, hang on a minute, our degree is not qualifying anyway. And this person in his country, they're already a lawyer, they're a drafter. So I can make a very good case, and 99% of the time it goes through.
Okay.
But if you don't have anything else, if you're just fresh out of university and you have low grades, you would need to wait a bit, get a few more qualifications under your belt.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think that's realistic and sage advice there. So that is all the questions that we have time for today. And I just want to thank everybody for attending the LLM webinar. My colleague has already posted in the chat box a link to our inquiries page and also Constantin's email address. So if you have any further questions, there are so many people that are willing to answer those for you. And I just want to give one final reminder that the application deadline is the 31st of July for the September 2025 intake. So we look forward to hearing from you.
But for the January intake, it's now, I mean, if it's
Yes.
distance learning, we also have a January intake.
Okay, yes.
So if you feel that you will not be ready by end of August, really, then you can join us in January. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving us an hour of your life. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And there's also there's a link to the program page, so you can find out the deadline for that January intake on there. Great. Thank you, Constantin. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.